Hi, my friends. Today I want to present you a new story. Enjoy watching it.
The phone buzzed on my desk, the unfamiliar number glowing on the screen. My heart skipped a beat. I hesitated, my fingers hovering over the screen. With a deep breath, I picked up. Hello. My voice betrayed none of the anxiety swirling inside me. Leon. The voice on the other end said. It was unmistakable, gravelly, authoritative, and unyieldingly familiar. My father. It's Dad. After nearly 8 years of silence, it was unexpected. I gripped the phone tighter, 100 emotions threatening to spill out at once. Memories I had buried long ago began clawing their way to the surface. The cold dismissals, the quiet dinners where I was invisible, the times I begged for his approval only to be overshadowed by Hannah's antics. Hi. I managed, my voice clipped. There was an awkward pause. I heard the news, he continued, head of the local branch. That's impressive. His words hung in the air, weighted and brittle, as if the acknowledgement itself pained him. I waited for the inevitable what that always followed the rare moments he deemed me worthy of praise. Thanks, I replied cautiously, unsure of where this was heading. We're having a family celebration this Saturday, he said finally, his tone shifting to something that resembled warmth, though it felt more like manipulation. It would mean a lot if you came. I froze. Family celebration. It was laughable. The last time I'd been in the same room as my family, I was 21, fresh out of college and invisible to them even as I packed my bags to leave. Since then, I had learned to live without them. Or so I thought. I'm not sure, I said, buying time to steady myself. Leon, he interrupted, a hint of impatience breaking through. It's been years. Your mother and Hannah will be there. They've been looking forward to seeing you. That was a lie if I'd ever heard one. My mother's disinterest in me had been a lifelong constant, and Hannah wouldn't have cared if I fell off the face of the earth. I'll think about it, I said, unwilling to commit. Good. His voice softened, as though he'd won some invisible battle. It'll be good for all of us to reconnect. See you then. The line went dead before I could refuse outright. I stared at my phone, the screen now dark but the words still ringing in my ears. I didn't want to go. Yet, an old curiosity gnawed at me. Why now? What could they possibly want after all these years? That evening, as I sat in my quiet apartment, I called the one person who had always stood by me, Grandpa. Leon, he said warmly when he picked up. You sound conflicted. I got a call today, I began, from Dad. Grandpa's end of the line was silent for a moment before he asked, what did he want? They're throwing some family celebration, I said bitterly. Apparently, they want me to join. And what do you want? He asked gently. To pretend they never called. The words escaped before I could filter them. But I don't know. It feels like something's off. Grandpa sighed. You've come a long way, Leon. You've built a life they had no part in. Whatever their reason, don't let it undo the person you've become. I nodded, though he couldn't see me. You're right. But if they're reaching out now, it can't be good. I'll go, I said finally, but only to see what game they're playing. Just be careful, Grandpa warned, and remember you owe them nothing. I hung up, feeling slightly more grounded. Still, a sense of unease settled over me like a storm cloud. Something about this wasn't right. My father's sudden praise, the invitation, the urgency. Whatever it was, I would find out on Saturday. The familiar house loomed ahead, its peeling shutters and overgrown hedges a stark contrast to the meticulously curated home of my memories. 8 years had passed, but nothing had changed. As I stepped out of the car, the tension in my chest tightened with every step toward the door. My father answered after 2 short knocks. Leon, he said with a wide grin that didn't reach his eyes. Come in, it's been far too long. The air inside was thick, laced with lemon polish and a faint hint of mothballs. My mother sat in the living room, her teacup poised mid-air like she'd rehearsed this exact tableau. Leon, she said with a clipped smile, welcome home. I muttered a polite greeting, but my focus shifted as Hannah made her entrance, her heels clicking confidently. She swept toward me with a tight hug, her saccharine perfume stifling. You look hardworking, she said, stepping back to appraise me. And you look expensive, I shot back, my gaze flickering to her diamond earrings. Lunch was served with all the warmth of a boardroom meeting. The conversation tiptoed around anything meaningful until my father leaned forward, his expression carefully neutral. "Leon, we've been so proud of your success," he began. "It's inspiring, and it got us thinking." "Thinking about what?" I asked, setting my fork down. "Hannah's been considering a new career path," my mother chimed in. "And with your position, we thought you could help her get started at your company." A knot formed in my stomach. My eyes darted to Hannah, whose smirk hinted at her expectations. "So that's why you wanted me here?" I said, my voice steady but cold. "Don't make this about you," my father retorted. "This is about family helping family." "Family?" I let out a dry laugh. Where was this family when I worked 2 jobs to get through college? The table fell silent. My mother's gaze turned icy, but Hannah's smirk never faltered. "If Hannah wants an opportunity," I said finally, "she can earn it herself." I left the table before anyone could respond, stepping onto the porch to calm the storm building inside me. The cold air bit at my cheeks, but it was the only thing grounding me in that moment. My father came up to me and said, "Whatever you decide, come to dinner tomorrow, we'll be waiting for you." The next morning, I sat in my car outside Grandpa's house, my fingers wrapped tightly around the steering wheel. His house had always been my sanctuary, a place where I wasn't compared to Hannah or dismissed by my parents. But today, something felt different. "Leon," Grandpa's voice came through the door before it even opened. He stood there in his sweater vest and slippers, his face lighting up in a way that made the tension of the previous day momentarily dissipate. Come in. I made your favorite tea." I stepped inside, enveloped by the familiar warmth of the home that smelled of old books and freshly baked cookies. My life had been built brick by brick, starting with the foundation Grandpa laid for me. It wasn't just the financial support he provided, it was the belief he had in me when no one else did. When I told him about my dream of attending college, he didn't hesitate. He sold his vintage car to cover my housing expenses, saying with a smile, "The car's just metal. Your future is worth more than any of that." Grandpa had been there through every milestone. My graduation, the late nights working on my thesis, and my first job offer. My parents, on the other hand, were conspicuously absent. I'd mailed invitations to my graduation ceremony, and while I knew they'd never RSVP'd, I still scanned the crowd that day, hoping for a miracle. Instead, it was Grandpa who cheered the loudest when my name was called, his voice breaking through the applause. From the memories, I snapped back to reality. We sat in the living room, and for a moment, I allowed myself to relax. "Your father called me last night," he began, his tone calm but cautious. I stiffened. "What did he want?" Grandpa's eyes met mine. "He said you refused to help Hannah and that you were being difficult." A bitter laugh escaped me. Difficult? They invited me to a family celebration just to guilt me into getting her a job. That's not family, it's manipulation. Grandpa nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "I know what they're like, Lean. But I wanted to remind you that you've built a life for yourself without their help. Don't let their schemes undo that." The family dinner was as staged as a theater performance, each person playing their role to perfection. My father sat at the head of the table, his voice booming as he recounted exaggerated stories of his achievements. Hannah, seated to his right, chimed in with sycophantic laughter, her hand occasionally brushing his arm as if to remind everyone she was his favorite. I watched the scene unfold from the far end of the table, my fork idly pushing around a slice of roast beef on my plate. Something about the evening felt off. The warmth was a little too forced, the smiles a little too sharp. "Leanne," my father called, his tone dripping with fox interest, "how is the new role treating you? Head of a branch at your age, remarkable." "It's going well, thank you," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. I wasn't about to hand him ammunition for whatever plan he and Hannah had cooked up. "That's wonderful," Hannah cut in, her saccharine smile making my stomach churn. "We're all so proud of you." Proud. The word rang hollow, a far cry from the cold indifference they had shown during my graduation or my first promotion. The catered meal was announced as nut-free, a specific assurance made for my severe allergy. Still, I found myself wary. When the main course arrived, I carefully inspected the dish. Nothing seemed amiss, but as I took my first bite, A faint, familiar tingling spread across my tongue. My heart sank. "Something's wrong," I said, my voice shaking. My throat began to tighten, and I felt the first signs of an allergic reaction. Grandpa was at my side in an instant, shouting for help as the room descended into chaos. Someone called an ambulance, and I was rushed to the hospital. Hours later, as I lay in the hospital bed, Grandpa leaned over with a grim expression. "I found something," he said, pulling out his phone. The video showed Hannah in the kitchen, subtly sprinkling crushed nuts into one of the dishes. My heart sank as I watched, disbelief and anger warring within me. She thought she could back me into a corner, but she didn't realize the fight she just started. The next morning, I was still recovering when Grandpa and I sat down with the police to file an official report. The video evidence was damning, leaving no room for denial. The officers were efficient, assuring me that the situation would be handled. "Given the circumstances, your family will face fines and be held accountable," one of them said. Later that day, I received a text from my father. It wasn't what it looked like. "Hannah made a mistake. Can't we resolve this as a family?" I didn't bother replying. Instead, I focused on getting better and moving forward. Grandpa visited later that evening, bringing my favorite flowers and a small smile. "You've done the hard part," he said. "Now let's make sure they never hurt you again." In the weeks that followed, my parents and Hannah faced the consequences of their actions. They paid for my hospital bills and were issued fines for their negligence. For the first time, I felt a sense of justice, a confirmation that I was no longer bound by their toxic dynamics. Standing in my apartment, I realized something profound. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving, independent of the shadows that once loomed over me. And with Grandpa by my side, I knew I'd continue to build a life worth celebrating.
Friends, what do you think of this story? Write your opinion in the comments. Would you like more stories? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button so you don't miss any videos. See you tomorrow.